Hello, thanks for joining me for 2nd Samuel in summer. Today is Wednesday, June 9th, and this is 2nd Samuel chapter 9. In chapter 9, we get reintroduced to a character earlier, and I told you back then to remember this guy's name, Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth. So David asks his servants or courtiers or whoever's around him, tell me who um, is left in Saul's household that I might. What he seems to want to do is to be a friend to his friend Jonathan, who is of course dead, died the same time as his dad Saul did. But David was so close to Jonathan, so he says, who might I honor Jonathan's life by helping someone in Saul's lineage? And of course, his son, Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth, is still living. He's actually living with friends in the territory that was in which Saul was very popular. And they find him. And this is the person that finds him. And I'm not sure. I would imagine if this was made into a play, this character would have quite the personality because his name is Ziba, and he is known to be not just a servant of Saul, but like a pretty high-ranking ally and friend and servant. I mean, he's a high-ranking person in Saul's household, and he has now become an ally of David, which is probably just a political move on Ziba's part, but Ziba helps David find Mephibosheth. And then David summons Mephibosheth to come to his house. And what David seems to do is, and this maybe isn't so clear when you first read the chapter one time, is that David brings Mephibosheth to his house and says, you will be my guest and you will eat at my table. Eating at the king's table is a big deal. That was a really important honor to have. It's like the captain's table on a cruise, but better. So this is what happens. All of the land and property and things that Saul had as a king, maybe, I don't know, maybe he had it was his property before he became king. Anyway, all of that is restored and given to Mephibosheth. Now, if you remember about Mephibosheth, he was lame in both feet. He was crippled. And it says it bookends this story with reminding you, just in case you forgot, Mephibosheth, feet don't work. So we were with Mephibosheth, and he brings him to Jerusalem. He sits at the king's table. So he restores all his fortune. Everything that Saul would have had he lived, Mephibosheth gets. And David makes sure of that. Now, because he's got Mephibosheth in his household to sit at the king's table, David will take care of Mephibosheth for the rest of his life. And it seems to scholars that David grants all of Mephibosheth's land. It's still owned by Mephibosheth, but Ziba gets to work the land and profit from it. And so everything that he needs for himself and his household, because he has a big household and servants, gets supplied by Mephibosheth's wealth. Because Mephibosheth doesn't need wealth because he's got King David and he sits at the king's table. So David takes care of Mephibosheth as one of his sons, just like he's one of his own sons. And then Mephibosheth's fortune's restored to him, but is like a tenant into Ziba's control. So Ziba is taking care of all of it, make sure the farm keeps running or whatever it is, and then he gets to enjoy all the rewards from that, all the money that is made from that enterprise. So, and here's another interesting tidbit. The only living heir to Saul's throne is Mephibosheth, and he is lame in both feet, which would preclude him from get any demands or claims on the throne of Israel. So he's a safe bet. And instead of getting the idea that David wants to bring him into his own palace and he's seated at his own table in order to put him basically under house arrest and keep him, keep a thumb upon him, it's really couched as more of a devotion to Jonathan, his beloved friend. So it doesn't have to do with his old stuff, to do with Saul and their conflict is that's over and done with. I just want to honor this relative of my beloved Jonathan, and it happens to be his son. Now, Mephibosheth actually has a son too, and it says later in other books that Mephibosheth had several sons. So he is, I guess the only thing that was wrong with him was his feet. So he had several sons, and they would all inherit the same thing that David has now restored to him. But, because of the lame feet, no claim to the throne. So, no threat for David, just a way to be loving and open and kind. So, that is how David is kind to Mephibosheth. Now he's got like another son sitting at his table with a little crippled feet underneath the table. That's how it works. So, I hope you have a beautiful day. Chapter 9.